Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening for our very first Homecoming Family Weekend virtual session for 2021. We will get started shortly as we let folks make their way in from the waiting room. As we let more people join us, just a quick reminder that tonight's session is being recorded. Throughout tonight's session, please feel free to utilize the question and answer feature located at the bottom of your screen. We will have at the end of tonight's session time for a live question and answer with our panel. So please utilize the question and answer feature at any time during the session to pose questions that we will ask our panelists. But please, a few reminders, do not share any personal information, and you have the option to submit questions anonymously. All right, again, thank you for joining us tonight for the very first session of this year's virtual Homecoming and Family Weekend lineup, Paging Future Doctors. My name is Dan Perez. I am the program coordinator for the Office of Parent and Family Programs here at UC San Diego. And it is my honor to welcome you all to kick off Homecoming Right, talking about health professions and the way students can pursue those professions here at UC San Diego, the resources provided for those students, and hear from some alumni who are currently working in the medical field about their experience not only as a student but as a professional. So again, the purpose for tonight's session is to learn different paths for students pursuing careers in the medical field, discover resources UC San Diego offers students interested in health professional school, and we're going to hear from actual UC San Diego alumni who are currently working in the medical field. So when we think about medical school, most people think primarily MDs and doctors, but there's a plethora of different professions that are located in the medical field and health professions. The graphic you see on screen covers all the different health professions that students here at UC San Diego can work to pursue, be it through medicine, dentistry, pharmacy, as a physician assistant, optometry, physical occupational therapy, veterinarian medicine, public health, and nursing. And to reach any and all of those professions, there's a long list of accomplishments our students have to start working on as early as their first year here at UC San Diego. So, preparing academically for health professional school, it takes a few years and requires different academic requirements. So as you can see on screen, most health professions require different courses to be taken, and additional requirements may include, courses from biochemistry to anatomy to physiology, microbiology, psychology, sociology, and even a foreign language, depending on what health profession your student would like to discover. And when preparing academically for a health professional school or medical school, it's important to keep in mind that there is a checklist that students will have to accomplish in order to apply for their next journey. That checklist not only includes academic transcripts, which would include the courses that are required for those health professional schools. It would also include standardized test scores. Many health professional schools require different standardized tests, and information regarding those standardized tests can be found on the Career Center. That's careercenter.ucsd.edu or career.ucsd.edu. I'm sorry. We'll post that link in the chat shortly. Letters of evaluation and recommendation are also required in order to apply for programs in health profession, and a personal essay. Now, not only is there an application that will be required of students pursuing health professional school, but also an interview will accompany many of those applications as well. And so students will need to ensure that they are preparing themselves not only academically so that they can submit a paper or digital application, but also preparing themselves for an interview. Another way UC San Diego recommends that students prepare themselves for health professional school is with experience. It is recommended that students gain healthcare or clinical experience. They can do this because most hospitals and clinics have established and structured volunteer programs that provide shadowing and clinical experience. There's also opportunities to do service or volunteer work that is also encouraged for those students who want to pursue health professional school. Many health professions expect applicants to have volunteer experience, specifically sometimes working with underserved or disadvantaged communities. A lot of medical schools say that that is an absolute must. There's opportunities for those volunteer opportunities, such as caring for the elderly, volunteering at food banks, helping the homeless, caring for people with disabilities, or tutoring in low-income high schools and communities. Also, providing health education to underserved communities is a valuable volunteer experience as well. And again, for those students wanting to pursue health professional school, the Career Center also recommends that those students take on leadership roles during their undergraduate. So that could be anything from demonstrating leadership through different areas on campus. So that could be through the Center for Student Involvement, getting involved in student organizations that are related to health fields or health studies and obtaining a leadership position in those. They could become an undergraduate instructional apprentice for a course that they may have done well in, or they could even become a student health advocate here on campus. Joining those student organizations and taking on a leadership role only helps better their applications when they're pursuing a health professional school. Another way the university suggests students prepare for health professional school is through research. Now, research is not generally a requirement for entering health professional schools. However, many students participate in some form of research during their undergraduate time here at UC San Diego, particularly those pre-med students. Again, while it's not recommended to do research simply to, quote, look good on your application, there are many benefits from participating in research here at UC San Diego. It could be an exposure to a different part of science or a different field. It helps understand the relationship between research and how it applies to your specific health profession. And it can also cultivate a strong mentorship with your PI and potentially get a letter of evaluation. Because again, those letters of evaluations and recommendations are going to be necessary for your student to apply to a health professional school. And it also helps expand your student's network. Oftentimes, research can lead to other opportunities such as shadowing, getting exposure to different programs that may have volunteer opportunities or internship opportunities or even more research opportunities. So there's some research opportunities that you can find on the Career Center's website that link to research opportunities in the Biological Sciences Resources Division. There's the Eureka Scholarship Program. There's other research opportunities available on the Real Portal. The Real Portal here at UC San Diego is the research portal that has a database of different opportunities for students to obtain that would help them find research opportunities. Handshake is a big tool here at UC San Diego. Not only do students utilize Handshake to make career advising appointments here on campus, but they can also utilize it to find research opportunities or internship opportunities. There's also opportunities through the biology faculty research, UC San Diego Medical School, and the UC San Diego Health Science Labs. So there's a ton of different opportunities for students to explore that are all located on the career.ucsd.edu site when you're looking at the preparing for medical school or preparing for health professional school links. And speaking of resources for students, again, there's so many different resources available for students who would like to pursue a health profession provided by the Career Center here at UC San Diego. We have virtual drop-in advising that they can schedule on the, again, section for pre-med and medical school advising. They can also go on to Handshake and schedule an appointment for advising. So those appointments can be virtual, they can be done over Zoom, they can be done by email, or they can even be done in person if those staff members are available in the Career Center. There's a ton of staff available for help in career advising currently from a few different departments. And so when your student is selecting an appointment for advising, please ensure that they are being detailed in what they are requesting so that we can make sure that we refer those students to the correct Career Center staff to ensure that they're getting the best medical advising advice possible. There's pre-pharmacy advising by pharmacy students provided by SCADs, pre-med advising by medical students, and that's provided by PAMs on campus. And then there's also the health beat that's students who are interested in either pre-med can sign up for or professional health experiences. And there's also events and workshops that are provided by the UC San Diego Career Center throughout the entire year. That calendar is also available on the Career Center's website. We will make sure to drop those links in the chat later on in this presentation. And I know I've seen a few questions about where these slides will be available. These slides will be emailed out to all registered participants after tonight's session. So tomorrow, when we send out the link for tonight's recording, we will also be sending out a PDF with these slides. So don't worry, I know it's been a lot of information in a short period of time, but we'll ensure to include these slides with the follow-up email you will receive for registering for tonight's session. Now, I would like to welcome our two alumni panelists that will be joining us tonight. Our first is Dr. David Buccigrossi. He is an alum not only of the UC San Diego Medical School, but of UC San Diego itself. And then we also have Jason Lamb, who is an alum of UC San Diego. They're here to talk about their experience, not only why they chose the medical fields they chose, how UC San Diego helped prepare them, but also what they wish they knew and how families can support their students now who are pursuing professions in the health field. So thank you both for joining me. I'm going to start right away. I'm going to throw it to David. And David, the first question I have for you is, why did you choose to pursue the medical field?
Well, I suppose it was my sister, but that wasn't the answer you were looking for. She had a big influence on me at the time, and she had wanted to go to medical school. And one thing I'd like to get out of the way right away, which is that everybody, the first thing they always say is that they want to help people. And that's true about all the healthcare professions, and it's true about virtually all jobs for that matter. And while certainly any prospective applicant into the future needs to express that to people, you don't want to dwell on it too much because that really should be obvious to everybody. I loved science. I got 2 majors and 2 minors when I was here at UCSD. I loved science. And I was doing research down at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, staring at my gas chromatograph machine at about 3 o'clock in the morning, watching the really nice blips on it. I was really happy about that. And I thought about all the postdoctoral students and PhD students that I knew there. And they were often complaining about physicians because in that era, 30 years ago, physicians sometimes had an easier time getting grants. And when they got a grant, they were paid twice as much. So I'm being really, really direct here, okay? And it occurred to me that as a physician, you could do the research, you could be an administrator, as I ultimately did become as well, or you could do clinical work. So the options, if you're a physician, if you're an MD, are literally limitless. You can do almost anything that you want. And so it was at that time I decided to finally listen to my sister and change my direction. I assumed I was going to Scripps, and I changed my direction and applied for medical school.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. Jason, I have the same question. Why did you choose to pursue the medical field?
I think it's funny, Dr. Buccigrossi, I think we are all a little bit influenced and initially nudged by some family member to take a look in this direction. And at first we may be excited, at first we may be hesitant, but I think what I would ask all of the families out there and all the students out there and the prospective folks interested in the medical field is, it's okay to take time to explore and answer for yourself and get more information. Why am I choosing this field? And I would echo Dr. David's comments is I was influenced by my mother and my grandfather. My grandfather was an Eastern physician, so he took care of the medical diagnosing side, but then he turned around and made the herbs for the patients. So he kind of took care of the pharmacy side as well. And I think for me, there was a pharmacology class that I took in my undergraduate that really introduced me to different medications. I remember organic chemistry was one of the classes that were extremely difficult, but I just happened to do really well in, and it connected with me. And to see how we could take those starter molecules and apply it to very different active medications and how it influences the body and how the body responds, that is what interested me in pursuing pharmacy. Now, the difficult follow-up question to that is, well, between medicine and pharmacy, that was also a difficult challenge. I did apply at UCSD Medical School and Pharmacy School, and I think I also appreciated the kind of the shorter term of after finishing a PharmD degree, one could still get a internship-like experience beyond that in a first and second year, but I was really interested in the medication aspect of it, and then ultimately decided to choose that over at UC San Diego.
Wow, that's so interesting to me, because my experience into what the health fields and the health professional fields and that pathway is so limited. So it's great to hear your two journeys. So I'm going to follow up with that. And during your times here at UC San Diego, were you able to kind of explore different health fields, or really kind of narrow down the field of study that you wanted while being an undergraduate? So can you talk more about that experience as an undergraduate, why you really decided, or what other options you were able to explore here during your time?
Do you want Jason to go or myself?
Yeah, Jason, if you want to start this time, I'll switch it up.
Sure, sounds good. I was waiting for my cue from you.
Yeah.
So I did my undergraduate at UC Berkeley, so up in the Bay Area, but still very much part of the UC Regents and the UC family. And in my undergraduate experience, as you were going through your slides, you reminded me and brought me back some memories of, I did volunteer at San Francisco General Hospital in the ER. I did have a chance to learn from the nurses and the pharmacists and the physicians, what were their roles there? What was a day like? Is the night shift different from the day shift? What tools can I bring to the team? And even simple things like communication, listening, empathy, all of those things were so valuable in gaining experience, because I truly believe, and Dan, you brought up a great point, it's not about checking a box to say I volunteered here. It's not about checking a box to say I did this research. I think the next step question for all of us to ask ourselves is, what did we learn about ourselves from that? And as you are all going through in the future, selecting your experiences and finishing your experiences and thinking back to it, think about, how did that connect with you emotionally? How did it challenge and stimulate you intellectually? And as you're exploring the different options, and there's so many different options out there, even more now, I think, David, we can't imagine in 5-10 years, there's going to be even more possibilities out there. So that's what I would say about my undergraduate experience and how it helped me explore.
You know, I want to second and third what both Jason and Dan said about checking the boxes. If you're checking the boxes, you're not in the right field. I mean, because these fields typically are very difficult. They're difficult physically and mentally. And if you aren't able to, or if you don't already have a love for doing it, then just checking the boxes is not going to work out for you at all. You know, in terms of the things I did volunteer in a hospital, and I did research down at Scripps for a couple of years. Again, I thought I was going there. So I was fairly involved in some of those things. Also, my brother-in-law was a resident at UC San Diego, so I'd often follow him when he delivered babies and things like that. I suppose I don't want to go into too much detail, because I think the opportunities now are much more fabulous than they were 30 years ago. And Dan outlined fabulously just how many things are available. But I will say this. I went to UC San Diego Medical School, and it's one of, I think, only 2 medical schools in the country that require a thesis. So I snuck away in my 4th year of medical school for 5 months to Nepal and did my medical school thesis on acute mountain sickness in the Mount Everest region with the Himalayan Rescue Association. So my point would be, that was in medical school, of course, where the families that are present right now are talking about undergraduate, but it's just an example of what's possible if you are motivated and want to do something, whatever it might do. If it's going to show leadership and motivation and caring for people, just do it and do it well and put yourself into it.
I think that's great advice that transcends even the health professions.
Yeah, that's everything.
Now, I've got another question for you both, and this time I'm going to start with David. So, David, the question I have for you is, if I can find my notes, gotta love when that happens, is what experiences would you say in your undergraduate studies contributed to your career? So I know you talked about a little bit of the volunteer, but is there any particular experience that you really contribute that sent you down this path or really contributed to what you're doing today?
Well, I guess I've already said a lot of those, haven't I?
Yeah.
Whether it was family or the various things that I did. I can give another funny story. I had met with the Peace Corps 3 different times. I was thinking about doing that. And I'll make this story very short by simply saying during the 3rd visit, he got up, because I was insisting on teaching science in Kathmandu, which they couldn't assure me of that. That's the way the Peace Corps worked in those days. So he took me for a walk, and somewhere along there, he asked me, well, what else could you do? And I said, well, I could go to medical school. And he said, oh, do that. And then later, once you're a doctor, if you want to come back and talk to us, we'll talk to you and we can send you anywhere you want, all over the world type thing. So it was another example of how being a physician can open almost any door. So that wasn't a focus of why I picked medicine, but I want to add that to the things that I've already said.
Well, I think that's it. That's that experience, right? That you got a little bit of a push that way of maybe what you're thinking about is the right path, and it can also, like you said, open lots of doors.
Actually, yeah, I also took a real estate law class in the summertime, and I met with a lawyer. The exact same thing happened. He said, what else can you do? And I said, well, I could go to medical school. He said, oh, do that. So, so I got that from many sides, including my sister. Okay.
So sometimes you just need to be
knew,
told.
knew those folks and was trying to influence them, David, to push you in that direction too. Your sister probably had some secret ties that folks didn't know about.
I probably did. Yes.
Jason, I'm going to throw that question again to you. So, is there a certain experience, or what experiences in your undergraduate really contributed to where you are today in your profession?
Yeah, thank you. And I did talk about the pharmacology class that I took. So I'm going to go a little bit rogue from your question and say that what happened was I actually took the MCATs in my 3rd year of undergrad, wanted to improve my score. I'm not going to share my score. No personal information to be shared. And I retook it in my 4th year of undergrad, and I did better. But what I wanted to call out, because this is something that could happen to many undergrads and folks looking at the medical field, is I took a gap year. So not everyone has to finish 4 years, come out, have the perfect life and the path planned. I was still choosing between which medical and pharmacy schools I wanted to apply to, and I took a year off. So it was really my 5th year, if you will, and it's beyond my undergrad year. But what influenced me about that year is I took that year to work in a pharmacy, because I said, I volunteered in a hospital. I know what that setting feels like. I need to know what my future could look like. So I worked in an independent pharmacy in Laverne, California. And it was there that I saw a lot of the similar things of connecting with patients. In that case, I saw a little bit more of the business side of things, how to deal with insurance, how to deal with shortages and medication refills, and how to really empower patients to say, why am I taking this medication? How do I know it's working? If I feel fine, does that mean my body's actually okay? Or do I need to know information about it? So it was really that gap year after I graduated from undergrad where I took some additional time to get that in the trenches experience from in a pharmacy. And that really helped me then lead to my decision of comparing my volunteer experiences in the ER along with the pharmacy.
No, thank you for sharing. And I think that is so important. And I think both of you and David have kind of mentioned this, that it's really important to figure out if this is what you're passionate about, because it may sound like this is what you want to do, or you may think you want to do this from a young age, and you get into the work and it may not be what you're looking for, or there may be a different side of the health professions that you want to pursue. for me, when I was in eighth grade, I was being told to be an engineer. I had no idea what an engineer did. I did not study engineering in college, even though I think my parents may have wanted me to. I studied journalism, which is very different. But it's the same thing, is once you get into your undergraduate, be your first or third or fourth year, the experiences you have, not just only in class, but outside, can really shape what you want to do moving forward. And sometimes you do need even a little bit more time, that gap year, to figure out if this is where you want to work. And then go back to school and rededicate yourself, because I think that kind of reaffirms your passion for what you want to do and how you want to help people. Thank you both for sharing. All right, another question coming your way. This one is targeted at families. So I want to ask, what do you wish your families knew about your journey into the medical field? And I'm going to start with Jason on this one.
All right. So if I'm talking to my past mother, who was very, very supportive, and at the same time always wanted the best for me, I think what I would tell families is, we all want our children, our loved ones, to find success, both career, both financially, and really to have something that gives fulfillment. So when we wake up in the morning, however hard or, easy and excited we are that day, we want to be able to wake up with a passion to move forward and do whatever we may be doing. And if the medical field, which offers so many opportunities and alternatives, Dan, I really like that kind of tic-tac-toe 3x3 visual that you showed earlier, because I think all of those ultimately takes care of a patient, whether that patient is a person or an animal. And I think what my mother knew of me is she knew what my grandfather did, which is she was an Eastern physician. So she really wanted me to follow that same footsteps, because she knew what that path looked like. She's seen that path that was paved, right? Now coming to the United States, going through the education system at the UC, it's not exactly the same apples and apples comparison to the path of an Eastern physician. So I think she wanted the best for me. So I think the things that I would offer to families is, we just need to acknowledge that all we want is the best for each other, but just know that as your son or daughter or cousin, whomever is going through this decision-making process, give them time and space to explore, to find out what they like. And more important, with students, I always say it's really important to figure out what you don't like or what you're not good at, because exploring that and falling down and tripping is what helps us stand up taller. And just know that it's okay to go through that discovery process, and not everything has to be set in stone. And my last comment is, of the students that I talk to, I always say our careers are decades in the making. We're not all going to be doing the exact same role every decade. If you ask me what I'm going to do 3 years later, honestly, I don't know. And that's exciting. It's exciting that the medical foundation we get from UCSD and the postgraduate schools gives us the tools to then branch out as the world and as technology evolves.
That's great. Thank you, Jason. David, same question.
Yeah, so in terms of family support, my mother had been a nurse, and my sister would go on to become a doctor as well. The main thing I'd like to tell the families here is it's really hard, and they're going to need a lot of support. The other thing is, it's, again, specifically thinking about physicians, there's all types of physicians. There were a lot of us, for example, in medical school that thought we couldn't stand the sight of blood. But truth be told, you get over that in a day. I mean, you have to, you don't have a lot of choice. And even if as time goes on, you've decided you don't want to deal with that, you become a psychiatrist or a pathologist or something. So there's so many opportunities. So it's important for families, if they know that their son or daughter is passionate about it and they really want to do it for whatever reason it might be, whether it's research or clinical or whatever it might be, to continue to support them through all the bumps in the road. Whether it's that they can't stand the sight of blood or they can't do organic chemistry. That seems to be one of the main stops for people. Find ways to help them through that, whether it's mentoring or tutoring or whatever it might be. Because if they are a person that should be a doctor, then you have to help them every step of the way to realize that dream. And it's very hard.
And I want to follow up on that too, David. I think when asking, not just about the profession, but what do you think families should know about their students' journey when they're applying to medical school or pharmacy school? So when they're applying for these health professional schools, what should families know about that and what that takes on, the toll takes on a student?
So I'm going to add on to what Jason was saying. I used to teach the Stanley Kaplan courses for the MCAT. one member of my family, we're supposed to stay away from private information here, took 3 times applying to medical school to get in. Okay. So what they should know is it's an extremely hard process. And while we've said the person has to want to do it, they have to love it and be passionate, they do also have to check the boxes. They have to get good grades and they have to take the tests and so on. So if, let's say, your child is not a very good test taker, then you want to give them, he or she, every leg up in terms of preparation for that MCAT, for example. Don't ask, should they be getting coaching and mentoring and going to classes? They must. They really must do all of those kinds of things. So the sense of support is kind of following their path, sort of emphasizing their strengths and the things that they may have weaknesses in, help them out with that as much as you possibly can. I had a gap year, but that was just because I discovered so late that I wanted to go to medical school instead, so I changed. But I think a lot of students these days end up taking 5 or 6 years with or without a gap year, doing extra courses and things like that to get into medical school. So this could be a much longer process than the 4 years that you were thinking about.
That's great advice. Jason.
I think as you gentlemen kind of talk about this very important topic, the visual that appears in my mind were actually my classmates. And I think of how one of my classmates, she was an amazing lady, and she was married, and during pharmacy school, she got pregnant, and she got through it while having a child. You know, I've had another classmate who spent an entire career in construction before he decided to then shift over and apply to pharmacy. So just know that, and I see in the chat, there's some questions about what should my major be, what if it's undecided. I think medical and pharmacy schools, and I think putting it on a different hat, I've also sat on the pharmacy schools interview panels where I'm now interviewing, sitting on the other side of the fence, interviewing prospective students. And when I look at a particular candidate, I'm never saying they have to exactly get this SAT score or these grades and GPA. I trust that, to Dr. Buccigrossi's point, is yes, we do have to check some boxes. But once they've checked those boxes and done what they needed to do, now I want to get to know the person, right? I want to get to know each of these experiences. Tell me more. Tell me about yourself. And I had one candidate who said, Dr. Lam, you were grilling me so much during the interview. And I said, was I? Normally, I don't feel like I'd be grilling anyone during the interview process. But because I saw that she was a pharmacy technician, it made me think, tell me more about your experience when you were a technician. I want to learn through your eyes and your memories, what were situations you were in. And I was just interested. But I think because, interviews can be a nervous process, she felt like a little bit different. So perspectives, we have to respect other people's perspectives. But I just think there's no one cookie cut way to pursue it. If it's in your soul, it's in your passions, you will get there. And really, it's just, if you're pursuing it and you're going through the interviewing process, I always say it's when you're going to interview or applying, you as the candidate, you're also interviewing the school. So when you're there, look at the other medical and pharmacy students there. Are they smiling? Are they not smiling? Get a vibe for what the culture is like, because you're there to also evaluate what vibe you get when you're on campus or now virtually meeting the prospective school that you're targeting. Because ultimately, once all that is put into place, then, when you apply and you get hopefully one or more options to choose from, now the ball's in your court, the power's on your side. And you're going to want to think back to those experiences of you interviewing and the vibe that you got from each school, what best suits you and what best fits your personality.
That's great. And you both kind of also addressed one of the final questions I had for you from our panel discussion is if you had a singular choice words of advice, singular advice for students who want to pursue a health profession, what would it be? So if you have anything else you'd like to share before we move on to our live Q&A, directed primarily at the students that are joining us tonight, what would you like to say? And David, I'm going to go to you and let Jason, because I know he just gave a great answer, take a second to think about it.
He did, and I'm going to follow on to his great answer, and the single word I would say is unique. And the reason I'm saying that is that, the people that apply to medical school, there's a ton of really sharp, smart people that are applying to medical school. So you have to stand out. You know, if you're an admissions officer at a medical school, you're looking literally at thousands of applications and a lot of checked boxes and pretty good MCAT scores and grades and things like that. You know, I saw a couple of questions about specific majors and things like that. And I agree with what Jason had to say there. I don't know that that's that important, because as an admission officer, and I did this a little bit, I mean, you see all kinds of different majors. What matters is if I see that Fred, who is applying to me, that he did something he was passionate about, showed a lot of motivation, showed a lot of leadership. Maybe he created something new. Maybe he made a current program better than it was. And the letter of recommendation that comes from that program or whatever it might be really reflects that. So I look at this and I say, well, I say to myself as a physician interviewing, you know, all physicians are leaders, and we want leaders from all walks of life. We want ones who are expert English majors. And we certainly, of course, want a lot of science majors in there too. That's true. But it's important to follow things passionately, be unique, make your application stand out so that you're not just one of those hordes of incredibly smart kids which are applying to medical school.
Unique. That's a great piece of advice. Jason.
I think the word I would use, and I think, you know, we probably have brought this up a couple times during our session here today. Again, thank you for all the students and families for joining us. I think the word I would use right now is discovery. You know, discovery means that you're spending time to gather information. And as you're discovering more about these programs and these paths, I think you're discovering about yourself. And I think discovery is such a powerful thing. I would even say, I'm still discovering what do I want in my future, you know, and I think all of these medical fields offer a lot more broad, non-traditional potential paths that we can't even imagine today. So I think just know that once you make a decision, it's a decision that likely down the road in your medical field journey, you're going to be asking to make new discoveries again and again when you want to stay in a particular practice setting or pivot to a different one.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen. We are going to open it up now. So again, folks, if you would like to ask a question, you can utilize the question and answer feature located at the bottom of your stream. Thank you to those that have already asked some questions. I'm going to dive into those. And I know David and Jason have been keeping a close eye on these. So the first question I want to pose is from a parent who says that their son is a first-year human bio major, and they're hoping to be an endocrinologist. I did not pronounce that correctly. I don't feel like. Any advice for him or tips to follow this pathway? And I want to also add, is there any tips for a first-year student who is just here? It's week 3. They're 3 weeks into their first year at UC San Diego. Any tips for them when they're looking down that long pathway to their career?
I guess I'll go on this. First of all, the people only end up, with regard to becoming physicians, they only end up becoming the physician they thought they were choosing 4 or 8 years earlier, about 10 to 20% of the time. So most people end up changing. But for example, he's only a first year, but certainly as these years go on, he should try to volunteer in an endocrinologist's office. Whether it be back in his hometown over the summertime or somewhere locally here at UC San Diego, to just get some exposure to that. And that kind of thing, very simple volunteer work like that can be readily done. You typically are just an observer, but he could start with that.
Awesome. Jason, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, and I guess I would jump in. I can't speak on behalf of the physician training because I am not one. Yeah. And I know some wonderful endo physicians as well. I think what I would say is, please, when you go back to the slides, refer back to the slide that Dan had with all the prerequisites of all the basic science courses that you need. Because as you asked that question about the first year, I'm thinking back to when I was a first year up in the Berkeley area. I wanted to make sure I didn't postpone signing up for one of the classes quarterly and then have to then wait an entire year calendar-wise to take it the subsequent year. So I made sure I enrolled in those courses, which often are very impacted because they're very, a lot of students. And I heard that there's a record enrollment for UC San Diego. So congratulations to the campus for that. I do keep up with the news in addition to being a busy dad. Um, but just make sure you get those basic science courses enrolled. And then when you do have some flexibility, in my first year, I took Asian American Studies. I took music, but it's because I had my physics and my chemistry locked in. I was already enrolled in those courses, but that's where you may want to take some other courses that are not science related, just to give you that time to explore different things. And when you are so focused on one particular basic science, and then you have that other class that's just about art and music and whatever else it may be, it's a nice intellectual and emotional break from it. And I think in the past years, we needed to find things that stimulate us, things that recharge us. So I think having that variety in the course, once you at least get your basic science classes enrolled, then you'll have some time to explore other areas.
Both offering fantastic advice. I do want to just jump on to Jason's. If your student is looking at trying to schedule out their courses and they're looking at their course map, the biggest resource that they can utilize that and follow Jason's advice is meeting with their academic advisor. So if they're already in their major, if it's, like you said, biomedical, human physiology, make sure they're meeting with that academic advisor so they can talk about when these classes are offered, how to schedule them, what the best roadmap is for them. Now, when it comes to general prereqs, like writing requirements or their college requirements here at UC San Diego, they would want to meet with their college advisors. I will post some links for those advising offices in the chat, but that's great advice. Love to hear it, especially at week 3. I always try to tell parents during orientation, the best thing your student can do when they start is already set up an advising appointment as soon as they can, just so they can understand what they're doing and where they're going to go and get some advice from someone that sees schedules every day, all day. My first year as an undergraduate, I thought, you know what? I used to get up for 7:30 at school, so 8 a.m. classes Monday, Wednesday, Friday will be no problem. That is the worst mistake I think any first-year student makes, is thinking that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 a.m. classes are the same. I wish I would have talked to my academic advisor at that point, who maybe would have been like, you maybe don't want to do it because this isn't high school. It's very different. So that is just a small sample of some advice that the academic advisor can offer, but it's very important that, especially with courses that may not be running every quarter or maybe only held annually or every other quarter, depending on what session it is, that they're connecting with their academic advisor. Another question, I know we've talked about it a little bit. We've talked about volunteer experience. We talked about clinical experience. So this is a bit of a two-parter. How would you suggest one get clinical experience? And then also, how early should a student look to get volunteer experience?
So, well, it's never too early to do any of these things, I suppose. In terms of clinical experience, it can be in physicians' offices. It can be with ambulance drivers. It could be in the hospital. It could be volunteer experiences overseas. For example, when I worked with the Himalayan Rescue Association. So there's just a wide range. And again, the slides and resources that you put up there are just, I mean, there must be extensive things that one can do. In terms of volunteering, I mean, volunteering, it doesn't have to necessarily be medical or health. That's good, of course, but again, what's most important is for the student to be able to show that it was incredibly meaningful for them, and they got something out of it, and the people around them got something out of it. That's really the most important part, whether it's distributing clothes over here or giving COVID-19 vaccine shots or whatever it might be. The most important thing is to see the passion that you brought to it and how well you did it.
And I think I would echo that and kind of say the same thing, but in a different way. It's never too late, right? So just because you may see that, oh, you know, I have classmates or colleagues or my siblings did so many things earlier, it's never too late to start. It's only too late if you don't act and actually decide to start at some point. So for example, I think, Dr. David, you bring up a great example. I recently was involved in one of the COVID-19 vaccine superstations that my employer ran. And we actually had volunteers, some as young as 16 years old. One, because they wanted to be able to see what it's like in that clinical setting. And two is because they wanted to be there with their family and their parents and to really share that experience together, because I think this is a way for them to bond and understand what that is as well. So I think, when we had volunteers in that setting, some folks were escorting people, some folks helped us with translation when we needed Spanish speaking or other languages as well. So I think times and needs will call upon a community and our community members to step up. And if you have an opportunity in your local areas to see where are the needs, are there food bank needs, are there vaccine clinic needs, are there medical clinic needs, are there pharmacy needs, always be open and try it out. And again, goes back to the earlier point, when you go and volunteer at these places, these may be your future employers. So again, you're having a chance to see, do I want to work in a place like this? Are people happy here? What is the teamwork like? And I always say, I always say to students, when you're in a clinical setting, whether you're a pre-pharm, pre-med student, whether you're a pharmacy student, medical student, is you always want to ask yourself, what is the clinician doing in that setting? How is the clinician adding value? Is it empowering patients? Is it offering a critical clinical medication decision on what regimen to select? Ask yourself, what are the good clinicians doing? And when you can see and observe that, replicate that, copy it, learn from those mentors. And if you're in a setting where you're like, wow, I wish we had more clinicians in the setting, ask yourself, once you become a fully fledged physician, dentist, whatever it may be, what would you do in that setting if you're that go-to person calling the shots? And I think as you are out there and you observe the good mentors and clinicians to learn from, you can learn what traits and what things you need to explore when you're out there.
No, that's, again, fantastic advice. I think we're coming to the close of our live Q&A, and just one question for the both of you. As you're currently in your professions, when you look forward to the future of each of your specific areas in the medical field, what is something students should know about pursuing your respected fields? It's a tough one. I saved it for last on purpose.
That is a tough one because I think a lot of young people think that medicine is going to be changing dramatically, and it is, and it'll become more and more remote and distant and not as touchy as it used to be, and so on and so forth. It's also becoming more algorithmic, almost engineering wise, as opposed to, just the one-on-one with the physician. So it's true that many of the new trends in our society are going to bear themselves out in medicine as well as any other profession, I suppose, out there. But it's also true that the heart and soul of being a physician is that one-on-one interaction with patients. And so don't lose sight of that you do need to have that, as well as all these new fabulous things that are transforming medicine right now.
I think what I would add to that is kind of try to keep it to one word, is just sensitivity. And it's sensitivity to the sense that I think it's great that so many different aspects of race, gender is being brought up right now, where we have to be sensitive to how do we connect with these patients, right? So Dr. David is completely on track where it's a one-on-one relationship with that patient. However, because we are all unique people, we're not always taking care of the same patient. We have to figure out how to connect with them. What will make them empowered to want to improve and change some bad habits and adopt some healthy habits, right? And we're not also going to be clinicians interacting with that patient every single day. So as I tell my children, my job is to give you the tools so you know what to do when I'm not there. And similarly with patients, how do we learn to not only know the medical knowledge and the medication knowledge behind the scenes, but how do we have the sensitivity to understanding the customer and the audience and the patient we're talking to, and letting them take control of their health, letting them take control of empowering their family member to take control of their health. So I think it's really understanding and being sensitive to whom that person is. Because if we cannot connect to that person in that way, whatever knowledge we hold and what training we got and the years of experience we have, that's not going to work. So I think it's really being sensitive to that patient and connecting with them, where then once we know we got it, then we're really partners with that patient and partnering with them to improve their health.
Thank you both for your time tonight. I feel like I have learned just so much more And then if I hadn't already gone through my undergraduate and master's program, I may want to pursue a medical field position after this. So again, thank you so much. And you two are great examples of UC San Diego alums who are doing and making change in the world. And I want to thank you not only for your time tonight, but for, again, your contributions in the medical fields and the health professions in making the world a better place. So thank you again for joining us. Folks, if you asked a question that was more specific to your student's academic journey or programmatic experience, please feel free to email parents@ucsd.edu after tonight's session. We will ensure to connect you with the departments who will be able to provide that insight into your student's individual plan. I know we had a few about international experience or different majors or changing or getting into a major, so please send those questions by email so we can make sure that we do the correct follow-up to advise your student correctly following tonight's session. I will also post those details in the chat. Now, before I let you all go, I just have a few housekeeping items to cover. So again, please know if you would like to watch this recording, it will be made available tomorrow on our YouTube channel. And there will be a link sent out to all registered participants for this session. If you would like to watch this back with subtitles in a preferred language, you can do so by following the steps located on the screen. So you can select the YouTube video, go to the settings tab, choose subtitles, and you can select auto translate into whatever preferred language you would like in order to make this session accessible maybe for you or a family member that would like to watch it and have subtitles in a different language. YouTube will automatically translate this presentation for you. Now, as I mentioned earlier tonight, this is only the first of 3 virtual Homecoming Family Weekend sessions that the Office of Parent and Family Programs is hosting this week. We have one upcoming tomorrow, which is going to be talking about studying and exploring abroad with our partners over in the Study Abroad office. They will really be talking about how the pandemic has impacted their program, how they've shifted in offering students different experiences, virtual and also in person during the COVID-19 pandemic, and how early students should start to plan if they want to study abroad, and what the future with coming out or still dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic may affect these programs, traveling, and everything you need to know about studying abroad. And also the many great benefits that study abroad programs offer UC San Diego students. And then on Thursday, a session for our senior families. It is Cheers to the Last Year. So if you are a family member, parent, or a senior student who will be graduating in 2022, you won't want to miss this session, as we have partners from Student Financial Solutions. We have partners from the UC San Diego Bookstore, UC San Diego Alumni, and the Black Resource Center and the Raza Resource Central, who are joining to talk about everything a student's last year has to offer. Not only the different celebrations and commencement ceremonies, how to get your regalia, how to attend grad night and grad fair, but also maybe some charges that may appear throughout the last year, like registering for graduation and commencement, and everything you need to know about your student's final year here at UC San Diego. If you would like to register for either of those sessions, you can do so on our homecoming schedule page on our website, parents.ucsd.edu. That hyperlink there will also take you to that schedule page where you'll be able to register for those sessions just like you did this one. And finally, it is homecoming week. We are in full swing for homecoming here at UC San Diego. And I know that I will see, hopefully, all of you folks that have already registered for Parent and Family Weekend at homecoming this weekend, October 22nd through the 24th. But please let your students know also that there is a week-long celebration of homecoming taking place here on campus, so they can still register for some of those events that are happening exclusively for students this week, and also join in our alumni and community members and parents and families this weekend for specifically the homecoming soccer game and the Trident tailgate and concert Saturday night. Again, if you'd like to connect with us, please email us at parents@ucsd.edu, or you can connect with us on any of our social media accounts listed on the screen. Specifically, that last one, that YouTube link, going to be very essential for watching any of the recordings of our sessions. So again, thank you, David, thank you, Jason, thank you for the staff that have supported on the back end, and thank you all for joining tonight and partaking in our first Homecoming Family Weekend virtual session for 2021. I hope to see you all later this week. Thank you.